yeah. We bout to bump, and hit 'em with the dirty headbanger 10-5 on the Richter. Back again this time with new members. It's a Canes thing, we bout to get with ya. Folks talking, ain't saying a whole lot. We bringing that straight fire to blow the whole spot. We keep the whole block locked like a fair pin and turn the game upside down like a head spin.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Bet CaneSport with Lee Sterling, our weekly look at the Miami Hurricanes from a bettor's angle. Lee, you hit it big last week, broke the ice with Miami. They caught you the first couple weeks, but this last week you said take Michigan State and the points, and unfortunately you ended up being correct. So give us a little perspective here as we start out this week's show on why you made that selection, what your thought process was, and then what you saw at Hard Rock Stadium on Saturday.
Okay, so I didn't want to be correct. If I'm going to lose a game, I'd rather lose a game and in Miami, perform well. But here's what I had seen going into the game. I had seen Michigan State was a different team completely than the last couple of years. I think Mel Tucker in 18 months, remember, he had a spring football this year. He did not even have a spring last year or recruit those players. I saw a coach that had a team that was disciplined, was tough, didn't make many mental errors, and didn't think that they were going to quit. So, some people had thought that they were going to falter in the fourth quarter. Turns out Miami was the team that faltered. So in Miami, I just expected more. So coming into the third year, usually coaches, and that's where they come into their own. They've got a majority of the roster, more than usually half the roster is guys that they've recruited. And in Manny's case, remember, he's the defensive coordinator. So even though he's not the head coach, how I think that the Miami recruiting staff and their recruiting is set up, they have a recruiting coordinator. He is responsible for finding guys early. And then each coach has a number of schools or an area they're supposed to be in charge of. And then once that coach, let's say it's a receiver. Let's say there's initial pool of 20, 25 receivers they're looking at for a particular year. Then they might get it down to whittle down to 8 or 10 receivers. Then that receiver coach will have input on the guys they want to go after, as well as the offensive coordinator. And then ultimately it's the head coach. So Manny's had input really since 2015, since he got here, on every defensive player. So I had seen in the first two games, I told you, I thought that Alabama could be taken. And it looks like Florida, with not maybe even their best quarterback, probably should have won the game. They outgained them, had more first downs, just couldn't come up with that key play that would get them over the top, but they only lost by 2 points. And then the second game, I'm giving Miami a little bit of a pass, which they should have prepared for the first game, had some different plays, had some different looks, and been sky high for, and they weren't. The second game, we're playing a good team from the Sun Belt Conference, but a team that didn't even win the Sun Belt, maybe the second best team, maybe somewhere in the top three, but we were lucky to win that game. So at that point, I'm saying we are who we probably think we are.
There's something wrong here, right?
Right. So here, after going to the game, you can see some other things besides just watching on TV. You can watch players in between plays. Are they gassed? Substitution patterns. You can see guys, are they getting guys in time? Other things, the coaches. So here's what I saw. You have some players like Gervin Hall. He's a microcosm of what is wrong with the program right now. Might be a nice kid, but he keeps making egregious mental and physical errors. The kid's been with the program, is it 4 or 5 years, Gary?
This is his fourth.
Okay, 4 years. When I watch other programs, when I watch kids who have been coached up to a certain degree, they are not playing like Gervin Hall is. He was a highly recruited kid. He should be playing at a much higher level. He should not be making these same mistakes over and over. So why are we struggling to find, for instance, on the offensive line, the right combination? Most of these guys have been here for at least 2 years. This is going on their third year. Some other transfers have come in, but we shouldn't still be trying to find the right combination.
All right, so let me just ask you something here. So you obviously have great, you're a South Florida guy. You have a lot of insight into the Hurricanes. You see all these things the typical sports handicapper probably doesn't see. How does that influence your stance on the game each week?
So a lot of times I think that the line was 6.5 on that game against Michigan State. The line at most should have been 2.5 or 3. Miami is the favorite at most. So I felt the line was up. Most handicappers, they look at lines, it's more about sales. As a former college quarterback, and I started studying. My dad was a youth league coach and knew more than most college coaches. He was a dentist. He was brilliant. He could sit there on Jeopardy and answer 75, 80% of the answers. It was incredible. I can answer about 25%. He took me one time when I was 11 years old to visit and learn about offensive football with Sid Gilman, one of the godfathers of offensive football. So at 11, 12 years old, these things are, I'm learning about these, and it interested me. So I study offense. I watch players. So I think I may not be a coach. I could have gotten into coaching, decided not to. I didn't want to travel around the United States for 15 or 20 years. So I can use my passion for football, watching and grading players and watching offensive football, how they match up against another defense. And I enjoy betting also. So I can, put both of those things together.
All right, so you thought the Hurricanes would play Alabama tight in the opener. Yeah. That didn't work out. But last week you said Florida was the pick in that game. Right. You had a big line, clearly too big of a line, and you recognize that. What did you see going into that game, and how did it feel to see it confirmed once the ball was kicked off?
Okay, so I thought that they had not been tested, Alabama. Felt they had a lot of young players, and they just had it too easy with Miami. I felt that Florida at home was going to be a tough place to play, which it is. It sounded like the top was blown off. If there was a top on the stadium, it would have been blown off. It's a tough. Well, you and I have been there. It's a tough place to play.
Yeah, no doubt.
They're good, and things are going right for them. And I thought the schemes were good. I thought that Mullen's going to scheme up some situations, which he did, and so just everything was looking perfect. Now, I was a little concerned about their quarterback for Florida. He passing sometimes can make some dumb mistakes, but didn't make those mistakes that he normally made, and they had a chance to win the game. So I just expect Miami. I'm not saying not expecting to win a national title. I'm not unrealistic. I think that as Miami fans, we expect better, and we're just not seeing it. We're seeing the same guys, 4th, 5th year in the program, making the same errors. So I even said to you when we talked after the game, before we knew how serious the injury was, King shouldn't have played in this game. And if he was healthy, he would have probably played close to half or a half. And I think that's a mistake. At this point, guys like Gervin Hall shouldn't be playing. You've got to send a message to your recruits that, hey, if you come here, you have a chance to play early and often. And right now, we're not seeing – he is playing some younger players, but from this point forward, and not just Central Connecticut State, in the conference schedule, the problem is he's trying to save his job now. And so he's going to do anything to win. And most coaches think that it's playing the experienced players. I think he's got to send a message. He's got to be a forward thinker. Say, I'm going to do something out of the box. I'm going to play younger players. I'm going to play Wayne. Look at Chance. Look at Chance. He looked great.
Yeah,
he should be starting.
He can get away with it this week, and he's probably going to. I think you're hitting on something there, Lee. He can play the young guys this week and send any messages he wants because against Central Connecticut State, it won't matter. it will matter next Thursday night against Virginia, and that'll be interesting.
That's going to be when we're going to find out what he's made of as a coach. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in him. So we need to send a message if we're going to turn it around. Usually at this point, 95% of the time, it doesn't turn around. Mm-hmm. Being honest with you, I've seen enough.
You are what you are.
Yeah, I've seen programs from Louisiana Tech to Washington State. And in the offseason, I watch 88 spring games. I watch almost every game that was played last year. So you have to make it, exciting for a player to want to come to a school. And right now, why would a player want to come here? So we're not developing players in every game. I would say, except for Florida State last year, we've been outcoached in practically every game since Manny Diaz has been here. Manny Diaz was not a good defensive coordinator before he came here. He was fired by Texas. I have many friends who were in the industry, coaching industry, and they said it's a mistake, him coming here. And I said, well, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. I thought maybe you don't have to be a great – you can be an average – okay, I'm going to say he's an average at best defensive coordinator. You can maybe be a good organizer and maybe, be a great recruiter and allow other people to coach. Now he's in charge with the defense. And I've told you this off air before also. He still has not stopped a good defense since he's been here.
A good offense. Yeah, so as a handicapper, if you're seeing a good offensive team coming into a game with Miami, which Virginia gave North Carolina some fits for a long time, they're getting better and better on offense. Right. So you see a good offensive team on the other side, that's going to influence your pick for that week.
Right. If Miami comes into that game favored by more than a touchdown, now Virginia's defense is terrible. I mean, they are awful. They're even worse than us. So I'm going to, if that line's 9 or 10 points in that game, probably going to jump on Virginia just because they can probably keep up with us and score. So right now, our kids just are not progressing. They're not being coached up. And I talk to a lot of people around the country. Right now, we've become a laughingstock. I mean, the Gervin Hall play is a meme. I mean, it was the number one worst defensive play in college football. Mm-hmm. And even average programs in his 2+ years don't lose to Louisiana Tech and get shut out. Don't lose to FIU. And the team that lost to Georgia Tech, when we played them, was one of the worst 10 schools in the country. So we also almost lost to Central Michigan. Mm-hmm. So the handwriting is on the wall right now. He just says Manny has never taken less and made more out of it. Quite frankly, and we're not going to talk about this going forward. We're going to talk about games. He's just not good enough. And,
all right. Yeah. So this week you got Central Connecticut State, Lee, and there's no line on the game. There's no De'Ara King. Is there no line because the line makers out in Vegas just simply don't know what to make of this game with the young quarterbacks playing and such an overmatched opponent?
So that's part of it. Sometimes they can't even get tape on these. If a lines maker, and the line is usually made offshore with a offshore sportsbook called Chris, or in Vegas at the Westgate. There's a few others, but those are the two that usually put out the first line. If they can't even watch a game or a tape of a game, believe it or not, there's some like Stony Brook and some of these other schools. There's been some tapes on them, and I've watched them, but they're such a low level school. There's probably no tape on them, and they don't want to take a chance. They will on these type of games lower the limit. Where on a college game, you usually can bet in the bigger places. Like Caesars and MGM, you can usually bet $5,000 on a college game. They will probably have a $1,000 or $2,000 limit on even like the Florida State and Jacksonville State games. They just don't want to take a chance. They're not out to hand people money. So once in a while, if you ask them for a line, they will give you a line. there's no line. I checked at 6 different places that I play with offshore. Not a line anywhere.
If Lee Sterling is making the lines, what would you have made the line on this game Saturday?
Well, the problem is I haven't seen them. If I had seen, I watch a lot of, FCS schools. So I've seen them, and there's some good ones out there. Like look at the Big Sky. They're having a great year. Blindly, 55.
I was going to say 50.
55.
Okay, let's see. All right, 55. All right.
Yeah.
So let's make up the line for our
Right.
show. The line is Miami minus 55. Which way are you going Saturday?
I'll go with Miami to win 58-7. We'll take Central Connecticut State.
You're taking the points again.
Yeah,
All right. There's some other good games in college football this week, Lee.
Right.
We talked about how you were spot on the Florida-Alabama game last week. Tell us, for the bettors out there, what games should they be looking at this weekend?
Oh, a couple that I like are the Wisconsin-Notre Dame game. So Jack Cohn, the quarterback for Notre Dame, was a starter 2 years ago at Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So lucky for him, he doesn't have to go back to Madison and play there. That would be really tough for him. Now, he knows the Wisconsin defense, but coaching staff knows him pretty well too. So not much of an edge either way. The games can be played in Soldier Field in Chicago. Generally, numbers, when you have bad numbers, it's going to bear out in your record, generally. And eventually, it might take some time. So, for instance, Notre Dame is 3-0. Usually 3-0 teams are in the top 20, top 30 in a lot of categories. Notre Dame is not. Running the football, they're averaging 2.9 yards per carry. Why is that? They lost 4 out of 5 starters from last year, and their replacements, quite frankly, aren't very good. So they had, I don't know if you would say a dominant line, but I would say top 10, top 12 line last year. They're probably Power 5 schools, probably, and I think there's like 60, let's say there's 64. They're probably 45 to 50. So that's a problem playing a Wisconsin defense that's ranked second in defense. The 2 years before that, 4th and 5th. So they're consistently, at least Wisconsin doesn't have much offense. Now, they should have been leading Penn State probably 17-0 the opening game of the year. They were tied, I think, with 0-0 going into the half. But Notre Dame is now, check this out, has given up 14 sacks. They are, I think, 106 in rushing offense. Defense, you would think, okay, they're pretty good in defense. Not the case. 73rd against the run, 81st against the pass. Eventually, those numbers are going to cost you games. And then on top of that, Wisconsin had a bye the week before. Very important in college football with decent coaching staffs. I like the Wisconsin defensive coordinator, Jim Leonard. You remember him. He played in the NFL for many years. I think that extra week, and Notre Dame has to face 8 teams this year coming off a bye. I've never seen that before.
Wow.
When they play them. So Notre Dame even got lucky last week. They got to face Purdue in a tight game early in the second half. Purdue lost their quarterback Plummer and their star receiver Bell. So on the outside, you're saying, oh, I'll take Notre Dame here. They should be able to take them down to the wire. I think the right side is Wisconsin. I think they pull away late, 27-16, winning coverage.
Okay, and what did you say the line is?
Line's 5.
5. All right, so take Wisconsin. Wisconsin's getting 5.
No, they're laying 5.
They're laying 5. Okay.
Yeah.
So take Wisconsin giving the points.
Yeah,
okay.
If it looks too good to be true, remember, Notre Dame's 3-0, Wisconsin's 1-1. You're like, why is the average better be Notre Dame getting points in a neutral field? They're probably going to have 60
it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
You've been on this since the beginning of the season.
Right.
You were talking in week 1 about Notre Dame being overrated.
Right.
And this will be the test of that this weekend with that line being 5 like it is, and we'll see what Wisconsin can do. All right, next game.
Texas A&M against Arkansas. So it's going to be a real test for Jimbo Fisher here. He's got a backup quarterback, Zach Calzada, and he's going to have to coach him up against another, we talked about Mel Tucker coaching up his kids and getting the most out of them. Sam Pittman doing a really nice job, former offensive line coach, used to be at Georgia. He's elevated this program in 2 years from nowhere. They were the worst team. I thought they were even worse than Vanderbilt when he took them over. So he's had some kids leave, but not many. And even the backups are buying into, just watch their sideline. They're excited to be there. They have a quarterback, KJ Jefferson, decent, nothing special, but he's a dual threat quarterback. And I think Kendall Briles, the offensive coordinator, can work with him. They have a couple receivers, Burks, Warren, and Morris, can make some big plays here. Another team with an offensive line lost 4 to 5 starters, Texas A&M, who we have to face early next year on the road. And the offensive line's not coming together. And then I think also this is a tough venue, believe it or not. I don't know why for Texas A&M. They failed to cover the last 3 games against Arkansas. Line's at 5.5, 6 points. I'm going to take the underdog. I like Arkansas. Game's being played in Jerry's World.
Okay, and then your last game this week?
Yeah, it is going to be the Florida State game against Louisville.
Really?
So there's actually a team in the ACC worse than Miami, and it's Florida State. I don't know where that game.
The Canes aren't that bad. I mean, they're probably middle of the pack ACC.
I don't know about that. They might be better than Duke.
You're expecting the season to fall apart to that degree, huh?
It can. I mean, it's possible. I mean, if they lose to Virginia on Thursday night,
all bets are off. I agree.
I knew Manny was going to say, it's all about winning the Coastal. That's the coach speak. Back in the day when I played, if that happened at my high school, my college, we would have ran the next day for 3 or 4 hours, not even put on pads. And right. I understand they have limited amount of hours. I think it's 20 hours a week with these kids. But you have to say to these kids and set the example, it's not acceptable. So Louisville hit rock bottom. And it looked like they were going to be in real trouble. But they really showed they have some heart against UCF. They were down 7-0 and UCF's driving. They held UCF there, and they took over the game. They dominated. Now, they didn't win by 20 or 30 points, but they were a 7-point underdog. I thought Cunningham showed well. Even some of his receivers started catching the ball. And, their route running was poor. They weren't catching the ball, getting many yards after the catch. They still don't have many running backs, but Cunningham is getting the job done. And a win like that can change some things here. He's like Lamar Jackson, very light.
Very light.
But he's a threat. He can run. He can turn a bad play into a 20, 30-yard game in an instant. And they had 5 drives of 75 yards or more for touchdowns. So that was impressive. It wasn't like they got fluky turnovers here. And Florida doing the same kind of thing that Miami does, maybe even to a larger degree, penalties, mental errors. You see kids quitting even more. They've got even more problems. I like Louisville 34-24.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, Lee. Well, we're going to have fun this weekend watching your make-believe line of 55 in the Miami Central Connecticut State game, and some interesting picks in those other ones.
And if I see a line, I'll put it on the board. I'll come on and let people know what it is. But so far, no line. The line might be, maybe should be 45, 40. I just don't know. I haven't seen this team, and some of the teams in that caliber have been really bad. I think it's going to be fun to watch the young kids. Let's see if Van Dyke and Garcia can show well. Wouldn't it be fun? I wouldn't want to do it at the expense of De'Ara King. I think he's a really good kid. But let's say one or both of these kids look great.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's a whole different deal. And they're not benching De'Ara King for Virginia if he's healthy.
No, they wouldn't bench him. But if he's not 100%,
and that remains to be seen. We don't know how bad he is. Like, we haven't gotten a true report yet. He got banged up pretty good in that Michigan State game. All right, Lee, thank you so much for your input once again this week. For Lee Sterling, I'm Gary Furman. Thank you for joining us on You Bet CaneSport this week. Enjoy the games this weekend. And Lee, we're giving you a special pass this weekend. You don't have to go to Hard Rock if you don't want. I think we would rather have you at home on the couch this weekend, watching all these other teams and getting some more insight for the future weeks. Keep an eye on Virginia as well, because we're going to be.
I will. I'll watch the Virginia. I'll have a full scouting report. I already had a built-in excuse when I was at the game. If my friend asked me to come this week, he did look at me and he said, "I guess no." He took 3 friends. I guess you guys aren't coming. He goes, "This would probably be the first game." Best time to take I think he has a 4-year-old daughter to her first game. And I said, yeah.
That's a great time to do that. And we want you in front of the television set.
Okay.
So Lee, thank you as always for your input. We'll see you next time, everybody.